Hello, this is Sean with T.C.A.T Gaming. I'm talking with Josh today. We are out at Game Center at our T.C.A.T games, trying out a bunch of different games. And Josh just got done playing Thunder Road Vendetta Maximum Chrome Edition.
Thank you, Sean.
What did you think about this Thunder Road Vendetta Maximum Chrome Edition compared to the original? You said you had played the original?
Yeah, I've played the original, I'd say more than once, but less than 5 times.
And you liked it enough, I guess, right, to get the newest edition?
I love the post-apocalyptic theme. It's a theme that, for our group, we have a lot of games that we play with that style of theme, and they're all mechanically very different games. And the interesting thing about Thunder Road is that technically it is a racing game. You have a set of tiles. You're driving on this endless road with hazards that come out of nowhere.
So when you say hazards, like what? What are going to come out? Like fire, shooting?
There's a lot of fire. There are, in the base game, you have hazards like oil slicks that cause you to just spin and move one other spot. In the Maximum Chrome Edition, they added a whole slew of things, everything from landmines to Tremors-style sandworms that come out and just eat up a car. There are earthquakes. There are new ramps that pop up and send your car spiraling several spaces around. It goes from in the base game of Vendetta, you have 4 or 5 hazards. In the Maximum Chrome version, you have 10 or 12 different hazards, and there's several of each. So you're drawing from a bag of 30 or 40 possible hazards each spot, and each tile has anywhere from 5 to 10 hazards that could appear on the tiles. And you have, in the base game, there are 5 double-sided boards, and the whole premise, again, is you have this endless road. And the road at any point in time is made up of 3 tiles. So as cars move forward on the road, as soon as they hit the final tile, and they go past it, the first tile in the very back is eliminated, is pulled off the board. So any cars that have been lagging back there are gone. They're destroyed. So then you draw a new tile, and then that goes into the front. So then what was the first tile now becomes the second tile. And then you always end up having 3 tiles, and you're just pulling the back one and putting a new one on.
So you're talking about cars, because I've never played Vendetta. For those out there that haven't played it, is this asymmetrical? We all have like 3 cars, and they're all built the same, or?
In the base version of Thunder Road Vendetta, yes, there are. The base version plays 2 to 4, and everybody has the exact same configuration. You have a small car, a medium car, and a large car. The small car is easier to slam into, and it is harder to hit with missiles, which makes sense. The larger car is much easier to hit because it's a bigger car, but it's harder to slam because it takes up more space. It's heavier. So in the end, the base game is perfectly asymmetrical in that everybody has the same stats for a small, a medium, and a large, and they all average out, to what would be a medium, in essence. When you add in the Maximum Chrome expansions, it adds 2 new play styles, one of which are called the Final 5, and they're 5 small motorcycles that act as small cars in terms of shooting and slamming. But when slamming, they're even lighter than a small car, so they're always going to get moved somewhere whenever you slam. The other expansion is called the Big Rig, and it adds 1 person that takes the place of a giant semi-truck that has 3 sections, so it takes up 3 spaces on the board, and it's always moving, and it just causes straight carnage in its wake. It doesn't care about hazards. It just drives straight through them, and it just takes minor damage after every hazard it does. It just keeps barreling through. Nothing stops the semi, essentially.
So thematically and then mechanically in the game, does it move slower than something that's smaller too then?
I wouldn't say it moves smaller. You have this thing called, again, it's a semi. Semis they're not very maneuverable. So for the most part, it typically goes straight, and you're able to do a couple like lane changes, if you will.
But it keeps up with the rest of the vehicles out on the road.
It keeps up. It keeps up pretty well. So the premise is each car you're going to roll a set of dice of just regular d6s, and whatever die value you allocate to a vehicle is the number of spaces that car is able to move. So if you allocate a 6 to the semi, it's going to move 6 spaces. If you allocate 6 die to a 6 facing die to a motorcycle, it's going to move 6. It's whatever the pips are showing is what you're going to move, and there are hazards out there, things like toxic goo that just stops you immediately when you move into it. That ends your movement. There's a hazard that we found called desert glass, which means you hit it and you immediately move 1 space in whatever direction you were moving. So if you were going straight forward, you move 1 space forward. If you were going at an angle on the board, because the entire tiles are these basically kind of chevron shapes, so you can always move in what would be like a front arc of the 3 spaces directly in front of your vehicle. So if you're moving at an angle and hit the desert glass, you're going to continue on at that angle. And we found that, for everyone playing, there were 5 of us. 1 person had played Vendetta before, but only the base game without any of the extra chrome, if you will. And then the 4 of us were brand new to Vendetta entirely. So for all 5 of us, all of the extra things that came in from the expansions were all brand new for all of us. And I feel like it was probably a little too much chaos because you shuffle all the tiles, and we happen to draw for the second tile out of the very beginning was one called the Ring of Fire, and it has probably half of the map is nothing but fire. And so by the second or third turn of the game, most of every remaining vehicle is on fire, which
wow,
was fun.
So a couple questions for you. How many players can you play with this Thunder Road Vendetta?
The base game plays 2 to 4. The expansions, the designers, their intent was only to use either the Final 5 or the Big Rig to make it playable to 5. But Justin Jacobson, one of the developers and the publishers of Restoration Games, he said on Board Game Geek, he goes, you can play with 6. We're not responsible for the chaos that comes if you do that. There's enough space on the board to play with 6 if you want. It's just, I guess the question becomes, how much chaos do you want to have? Because the motorcycles have their own kind of special rules for how you play them, and the semi-truck has a bunch of special rules for how you play it. It works great in its own way, but it's just adding all those extra rules. And I say rules, it's really more of just nuances, that are unique to playing with that thing, that semi. Do you want to add all that on top of, 4 or 5 other players?
You said, just a ton of chaos. You're adding more chaos to the game,
right?
Along with more players.
Yeah.
So is it like that when you go to 4 to 5 also?
Well, so 4 to 5, you're going to have to use one of either the semis or the motorcycle. So I feel like there was chaos. I don't know that there was a lot of chaos in just the addition of the motorcycles to the game. I think from really the extra chaos was all of the new hazards and the new tiles that came to us right at the very beginning. I think if we had, when we shuffled the tile boards, if we had drawn a couple of the base game tiles to start, it probably would have been a smoother transition than just immediately going into the fire of the Ring of Fire tile. As the second one right after, because the first move you can't shoot, and that's the whole premise. Is in Thunder Road, even the original, you've got basically 2 things you're doing on your turn. And that's not even moving, doesn't even really count. You're going to shoot other guys and you're going to slam into other guys. And you slam, somebody's going to move into another tile, another space. You can slam them off the board. You can slam them into a ramp, which happened to me multiple times, and then you die. You can slam them off a cliff. You can slam them into fire or whatever. And so you're going to slam and shoot all the time. And the first round, there's no shooting. So you're like, okay, you're just going to go forward on a nice, road of concrete that doesn't have many hazards because it's the very first tile of the game. And then you immediately go into the ring of fire that has 10 hazards and like 20 spots of fire, and it's tough to make up.
Gotcha. So you played this one time with 5 players. How long did it take you guys to finish this game?
So we started the game probably about 10:30, 10:45. Oh, we began setup. I would say, I was familiar with the rules, so teaching is 10, 15 minutes. It's a fairly quick game to teach.
Okay.
So I would say after setup, we started probably about 11:30, 11:15, 11:30, and we finished a little after 1 o'clock. So it's marketed at about an hour-ish, and I would say we went probably the better part of an hour and a half. But it was 5 people as opposed to 4 in the base game. It was new for everybody. There was a lot of chaos. It could have easily ended a half hour or more earlier because the way the end game is triggered is the first person that loses or eliminates all 3 of their vehicles, if you're playing the base vehicles, or the semi, or all 5 motorcycles, the first person to lose all of their vehicles, that immediately triggers the end game. And then you just take whatever the active tile is, that you add a finish line to it, and you're done. So there was one guy that was down to 1 vehicle on like turn 2 of the game, and he managed to avoid getting shot at enough to never be fully eliminated and trigger the end game. So the game could have easily ended in a half hour or more earlier than it did. Easily.
That quick, huh? Interesting. It just sounds like a lot of variability, even with the time of the game.
Yeah.
So, from what you've told me, if you love cars, you love the post-apocalyptic universe, and you love chaos, this is the game?
Oh, I would absolutely recommend this game to anyone that, if you dig, a Mad Max or a other Death Race 2000 or Escape from New York style, if you dig those types of movies, then this game it fits that theme, to a T.
One last thing I wanted to ask you, because you said, do you have the old Thunder Road?
I do not own the original. I have only played it actually at Con of the North. It's the only time I've ever played it.
And you said you played it a handful of times.
Yep, I've played
After playing the original, right? And doing the Thunder Road Vendetta Maximum Chrome Edition, like that's the maxed out version, right?
Correct. Yeah, this would have been the all in on the Kickstarter.
You would recommend, like, if you had the old edition, this is it that much better?
Yeah, I would say if you had the original and you really liked it, the original is much. I don't want to say it was much simpler because you still had slamming, you still had shooting, you still had hazards on the road, but there weren't as many variations of hazards. You only had a few hazards.
More chaos, Josh.
More chaos. More chaos. So if you want a much more refined version of the old game, I would say you could be perfectly happy with the base version of Thunder Road Vendetta. If you want much more chaos in every way, shape, or form, then go for the Maximum Chrome. There are 2 exclusive expansions in the Maximum Chrome that will not make it to retail. There is, oddly enough, if you want less chaos, there is an expansion called the German Engineering to make it more of like a Euro game. That replaces all the dice with cards.
Interesting.
So you can just draw. You can keep a hand of 5, and they all have numbers and target symbols for what the attacks would be, and you can play cards for your vehicles to move them around.
I'm thinking if you want a race game, you get something else that's like an IndyCar race game.
Yeah.
This is more about racing with chaos and destruction.
Yeah, like I said, technically it is a racing game. You're trying to make it to the finish line. at its heart, it is a racing game theoretically, but it's a game of just embracing chaos and slamming and shooting everybody you can, including yourself potentially. We had several slams because at one point all the vehicles are all bunched up together, and you slam somebody, they move, and they slam into a different car, and we were evaluating like 5 slams in a row of various cars moving and hitting other ones, and it's just and in the end everybody ends up in the right spot, but it's how you get there is very interesting.
Yeah. Yep. Well, thanks for sitting down and talking to us about Thunder Road Vendetta Maximum Chrome Edition.
Yep. Happy to do it.
Have a good day.
Thanks.